initial capability that we have been discussing. And then the pricing has not finally been agreed because there's no contract yet, but as I've said in other interviews, depending on configuration and also the infrastructure setup and all that, roughly 400 to 450 million US per aircraft. That's sort of the magnitude, but that doesn't mean we have a finally agreed price. But roughly 10 aircraft, but that's also, of course, not sort of a price issue. So I see it, what I've heard, is more about the concepts of operations.
Okay, we'll take the lady in the front row over here, dark hair.
Thank you. Charlie Hancock, Moscow Times, independent Russian media in exile in the Netherlands. Mr. Jonson, Ukraine wasn't able to intercept any missiles during Sunday night's horrible attack on major Ukrainian cities. Largely that was attributed to a lack of Patriot missiles. Is the Pearl program fit for purpose for getting Ukraine the equipment it needs quickly enough? And if I may, on the Gripen program, with the Meteor missiles, Ukraine would be able to strike targets within not only occupied Ukraine, but Russia itself. Would Sweden allow Ukraine to do that?
Well, just coming home from Ukraine, spending 5 days there last week, let me say, of course, the situation is dire when it comes to handling the ballistic missiles. We just a few weeks ago made the pledge to a new Pearl packages. Our experience is that the Pearl packages are very important because they provide PAC-3s to handle the incoming ballistic missiles. So my understanding, and when I talk to my Ukrainian colleagues, they say that the Pearl packages are very important. Of course, with Lockheed Martin is closely advised to scale up production of PAC-3s in order to handle it. But the Pearls are delivering. That was the message I was getting from the Ukrainian side. Then you asked about the Gripen fighters, and they have long-range air-to-air capabilities, which also could, for example, include Meteor, the glide bombs that the Ukrainian armed forces are exposed to that could force the Russian Air Force to move further away as well. So that is certainly an incentive, of course, for the Ukrainian side also to obtain the Gripen system. As you know, our objective is to provide the first Gripens early next year, and training is, of course, being undertaken as we speak. Ukraine has the right to defend itself inside and outside of its territory according to international law, of course.
Thank you. Next question goes to the lady in the end of the first row. Yes.
Hi, Elizabeth Gossan-Malo from Breaking Defense. My question is for the Swedish Prime Minister. Earlier during the announcement, I just wanted to clarify, you said that we would see the Global Eyes operating from Swedish bases starting from 2027, if I understood that correctly. And now we were talking about delivering the aircraft to NATO by 2030. Can you clarify what you meant by that?
Well, I just stated the fact that we use them ourselves as well. And we have a generational shift from the old model to Global Eye, and that has been going on for the last years, and they will be operational early next year. Yeah.
And would there ever be plans to create sort of a Global Eye hub for NATO inside of Sweden, or they would just be dispersed where operations are needed?
Above my pay level, please.
Well, these Global Eyes are, of course, the 10 Global Eyes are supposed to be operating from Germany. Then, of course, we have procured 3 Global Eyes, getting the first one from starting from early 2027, which will be operating from Sweden. So there's both bilaterally, countries are procuring from Saab, and then we have the pooling and sharing arrangement with up to 10 Global Eyes within the confines of, under the authority of SACEUR, of course.
Thank you. Next question goes to TV4, first row here.
I have a question for Mr. Michael Jonson. You mentioned that the Global Eye had already proved itself in conflict situation. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, obviously, I mean that it's been flying 24/7 during the Iran conflict in the Middle East. But it's been flying in the Middle East to check threats for a long time. But that's apparently a conflict where it's been used a lot.
And did you get a report back from the United Arab Emirates about how it performed?
Absolutely. We get lots of information on all our systems, how they are being used, both in Ukraine and in the Middle East. So that's important feedback, yeah. But it's been working tremendously well.
Thank you.
Okay, we will take the gentleman over here.
Thank you for the question. Lauri Nurmi, NATO correspondent, Iltalehti, Finland. A question for Mikael Johansson and question for Prime Minister Kristersson. This announcement NATO and Saab has made today are about deterrence, and our potential adversary is Russia. Mikael Johansson, could you please convince us why the technologies Saab has developed are better than the technologies the Russians have? Why Global Eye? And Ulf Kristersson, why Sweden is so strongly committed to weaponizing Ukraine, sending Gripens, even new Gripens to Ukraine? Why so? Thank you very much.
Well, convincing everybody about the fantastic technology is, of course, seeing is believing, but that's why it's important to say it's been used already in sort of really difficult sort of environments, electronically challenged, and also finding very small targets like drones and missiles at the same time, tracking more than 2,000 tracks at the same time. So it is fantastic sensor capability, but also the whole thing about understanding that situation awareness picture to do the right things with your fighters or with ground air defense systems or whatever you need to use to counter the threats. I mean, this aircraft has no weapons on it. It's all about gathering a situation awareness picture from the best sensor technology, best way of fusing information to give a proper picture to the end user and then do something about it. And it's been proven in many ways. For a while, this was the only platform that could actually find drones coming into the UAE airspace. So that's why they flew it all the time. So what can I say? We have excellent technology in several areas, and we are able to do sort of a pragmatic integration of all that to give the best situation awareness.
Simply the best, you know. Yeah. Well, just to add on that, I think if you combine the Swedish maritime resources, not least the submarines, and then the Global Eye and the Gripen fighters, I think it's fair to say that in our part of the world, including Europe, the Baltic Sea has never been as protected and as surveilled as it is right now, and for good reasons, because it hasn't been as challenged as it is today either. So there is, I think we are answering to the challenges we are facing. Your other question, those of you who have followed the needs of Ukrainian air defense for the last 4 years, you know the story behind this. Sweden was part of what we called at the time the F-16 coalition, mainly bringing a limited but still numbers of F-16 fighters to Ukraine. And Sweden was part of that effort, and we united for that not at that time deliver also Gripen fighters, because not to complicate the introduction of two complex systems at the same time. What we did do instead was providing them the predecessor to Global Eye, so which enhanced the F-16 capabilities that they actually got from other countries. And now, when we agreed with Ukraine for them to purchase in the long-term procurement of basically a new air force in Ukraine, that was also a natural way for us to speed it up. So while Paul made the agreement on 16 new Gripen fighter of the new generation, For the longer term, we also provide them with 16 of pre-owned or pre-used fighters as well. And I think it's obvious, you know, Ukraine is in dire needs of strengthening the air defense. We see that every night, basically. The Pearl packages is one part of that, but in the long run, they also need to have a stronger air force.
Thank you. Next question to the woman in red here.
Thank you. News agency Interfax, Ukraine, Irina Sommer. I know a little bit theoretical question, but can the capacity of Global Eye extend outside of NATO territories? I'm talking about Ukraine, to make Ukrainians be capable, more capable to protect their own territory. And if there is decision up to alliance, will be Sweden in favor of it? Thank you.
I mean, from a range perspective and how far it can see in the air domain and before sort of the curvature of the Earth starts sort of affecting how far you can see, of course you can see far into Ukraine and far into Russia as well, for that sake, if you fly at the proper place, but not too close to hostilities. So that's absolutely possible. So that's what I can say about that. That's why it's so important to be far away, but still see small things at the right place.
So the idea with providing them with IRI, the predecessor of Global Eye, was also that it can use Link 16, of course, and conduct the connectivity and the command and control from the air together with the F-16. Therefore, we focus on providing the Ukrainians with the IRI and waited with the Gripen fighter. So we did it in that kind of sequence. And of course, it provides the Ukraine with a much better sea surveillance and situational awareness, both in the land domain and in the aerial domain.
Thank you. We'll have time for a final question before we break for single interviews. I can say that all speakers will remain for single interviews as well, but we can take the gentleman in the shirt here.
Yes, Minister Jonson or Prime Minister Kristersson. On the F-16 and the Gripen, do you think in hindsight it has been a mistake to focus on the F-16 and wait with the Gripen? Do you think it would have been better if decisions would have been otherwise?
Well, from my perspective, it was not a mistake. You know, there were limitations in terms of pilots, in terms of introductionary capacity in Ukraine. So I think it was when we made the decision to provide them with the ERI instead, that in itself increased the capabilities of the F-16. So I think it was... But I still have to say that when we had Volodymyr Zelensky in Uppsala a few weeks ago, and we met the first fighter pilots after being training on the Gripen fighter, and he had been for 200 missions in a MiG, and now for 5 kind of test flights with the Gripen, and he told me and President Zelensky, this is a game changer.
Thank you. And with that, we break for single interviews. The speakers will remain dispersed here on stage, so please form queues.
Thank you.